So Gene Galin, he gave us several suggestions. He said, what is your favorite story of growing up, Bynum? Is that right?
Yeah, and the other one was, what is the scariest moment growing up in Bynum?
Okay. I can tell you the scariest moment in adulthood, and that was the night the mill burned.
Well, I spent one summer down in the mill when I was in college, working with a company putting in air conditioning. The mill had not been air conditioned, and this was probably 1968 or 1969. And the mill, it was old wooden beams and lint everywhere, just cotton, and this was in the summertime. Oh, and my job was to run the whole air conditioning system ran on hydraulics, on air, actually air pressure. So I was running these thin copper pipes throughout the mill, connecting them to thermostats and to controls. And they had these big shutters that would open and close that control the air. So I was running these little thin copper pipes and sorted them together. And I was up close to the ceiling up there. And I had to have my soldering iron in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. Every once in a while, that lint that was between the cracks would catch on fire and would just run down through the beam there, and I'd have to jump on it. And that was probably the scariest time for me. And it was hot there. I mean, it was 120 degrees on the floor.
Whoa. Wow.
Hot.
Raise your hand if you've seen the movie Norma Ray. Okay. If you've not seen the movie Norma Ray, I don't know if it's on Netflix or you have to rent it or get it on Amazon Prime, whatever. But you need to see the movie Norma Ray.
There's also a book that's, I don't know if you can get everything on Amazon. It's called Lint Heads, and it's a story about the cotton mill folk.
And Norma Ray was a fictional character, but she was based, if I remember correctly, on a lady from Concord, North Carolina. And that had been, she was one of the early she worked in the mill and was one of the early union organizers.
Yeah, she wasn't fictional. She was the wife of my ex-wife's uncle.
Okay.
From Roanoke Rapids.
Roanoke Rapids.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
Because I was just...
Uncle Cookie. He was in the movie.
Okay. So, Roanoke Rapids, and you said it was your wife's uncle's wife. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, Uncle Cookie.
Yeah.
And whenever you go into the mill, because of all this lint, it was just like a haze. And there wasn't any air conditioning, and the windows did very little to no good whatsoever. So one of the things that the people that worked there, both my parents worked there and were fortunate enough to get out. One of the things that everyone did at the end of the evening or the end of their shift, they would step out and they had a blowgun connected to a pressure tank, and it would actually blow as much of the lint off because the people would be completely covered in lint. Imagine what was going on with their lungs.
Yeah, I was going to ask what happened with their lungs. Yeah.
So
They used to come out of the mill and say, well, I gotta blow myself off before I get out of here. And they'd take the hose and blow the air and blow all the lint off.
Ron, what was your scariest moment growing up?
Growing up with Ted.
I was wondering if you were going to tell any of the stories that you guys did.
No, can't tell me all of them.
We won't repeat them.
One of the things that we did here, and this was before climate change, we used to have snow. And Ted had a Pinto, and I was so enamored with it, I bought a Pinto too. But we actually connected with ropes to sleds, and Ted drove us from here to, what's that name of that little store? up where Crabtree lives?
Frosty's.
Frosty's.
Yeah.
Frosty.
Yeah.
No!
Maybe 8 or 10 miles.
As fast as he could.
As fast as he could drive. And now I realize that was probably pretty dangerous. But I wear contacts now, but I had glasses then. So the stuff was coming off his tires and we were completely coated in it. He drug us on sleds for about 8 or 10 miles.
Whoa.
What would happen if you hit the brakes? I mean, you.
Yeah.
There were no brakes. Brakes?
Hit the back.
The great thing about the Pintos is, if you recall, it had a handbrake
Yep.
in the middle, and you could get to going pretty fast, and you could jerk up that handbrake, and that thing would spin like a top. And so we had all put our sleds in the back, and I was going down the road, and I pulled up the brake, and we spun around like that, and we looked in the back, and our sleds were gone. Where's our sleds?
There was another time you were pulling people behind a 442 Oldsmobile
Oh yeah.
over on Bynum Road, which was gravel at that point. And there was, I think it was 3 or 4 of us behind the car. And there was about a half an inch of snow.
Oh, no.
And we'd been about a mile or so. And all of a sudden, the guy beside me, his sled just pitched straight up in the air. And the front end dug into the ground, threw him off. I think that was Bobby Gale's.
Yeah.
And it turned out we had gone so far that it wore the runner all the way through, and it went in the ground like a spear.
Wow.
Wow.
The snow just wasn't quite deep enough. The gravel just ate that runner right off.
Oh, man. Man.
Tell about when your dad hunting on the land and the game warden.
Oh, we used to go down to the creek just down the river here called Pokeberry Creek. And it ran right through my dad's farm back there. But we would go down and we would gig for these fish. And the fish were called suckers. I don't know what the real name is. We always called them suckers. And they migrated, they came up the creek, and it was always in February, the coldest time of the year. And of course you'd have to get in the creek and wade and your feet would freeze. And you had to have a special license to do this. So
Even on his own land.
yeah, even if you're on land, you got to have a special license to fish. So we were in the creek, and it was Bobby Parker and my father and myself. And we were walking. Bobby and I were walking up the creek, and my dad was he was walking up the bank. He carried the bag, and we would catch the fish, and we would throw them up there, and Dad would put them in the bag, and he would drag the bag along while we went. Well, we got up to a turn in the creek, and the game warden was up there. He was waiting for us. And unfortunately, Bobby and I didn't have a license to fish. So my dad, being the smart guy that he was, took off running. The game warden chased him, and Dad ran until he couldn't run any further, stopped, and showed him his license. And by that time, Bobby and I were long gone.
Your daddy was a smart man.
Now I got two lies. I'm sorry, I got 2 stories from that. Joe's brother Dean and I went sucker gigging, and he'd never been sucker gigging before. So we were in Pokeberry, and you have flashlights, and they were difficult to see anyway. And so Dean said, "I see one." I said, "Get him." So he speared the thing, and I said, "Did you get him?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, bring him up." So he brought up my tennis shoe. I said, "How you going to cook it?" But he had seen my shoe in the water and thought it was a sucker. But also my uncle Robert he farmed during the day, and then he worked in the mill at night. And so one day the game warden came up to where he had a lot of land. It was the land that a lot will become Chatham Park. It was from what you'll see was mosaic all the way to the river.
Wow.
So the game warden drove up, and my uncle was standing out there, a farmer, with his hands on his head. And this was written up in the, whatever the sportsman journal is that they have. And he was standing out there with his hands over his head. And the guy came up and said, Robert, what in the name of God are you doing? He said, there are people over there fox hunting, and if you hear the dogs running, he said, I don't have a hunting license, so I don't even want to hear them run. So he wouldn't get a ticket.
Speaking of that, when you were little and your dad always.
Yeah, my dad was a big hunter. He loved the coon hunt, which was always at night. And he had 4 or 5 coon dogs, and they would go out, and I was just a little kid, and I would hear them dogs go out of hearing, and I would just sit down and cry because I knew that we were going to go wherever those dogs were. We were going to follow those dogs. But we were coming, actually, Joe's grandfather was with us one night, Mr. John Snipes, and I guess John and I, or maybe John had volunteered to take me back because I had gotten tired. And so we were walking back through the woods, and we were over here about where Farrington is now. And we cut across this pasture, and what we didn't know is that there was a bull in this pasture. And all of a sudden we heard this noise, and we saw this bull come running at us. And Mr. John, he found a board there laying on the ground. He picked up this board, and it was rotten, and it just crumbled. He threw that board in the bull's face, and we both fled. And for a big man, he can climb a fence really fast.
Yeah, his job back then was estimating timber. And he'd run into moonshiners and bulls and all that. He was used to that. Didn't scare him.
Because he'd be out walking in the woods, looking at the trees, and all of a sudden they'd come up on somebody running a still.
Exactly. Well, they would come up to the person that was scouting, looking for it, but looking for it still.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it was said that about every male in Chatham County made moonshine, except for the Baptist minister, and he made barrels.